Privilege for the last 2 years to serve as the Law School Alumni Association president. And as you know, for the last several years, the Law School Alumni Association has hosted the Frohnmayer Award for Public Service since its inception in 2002, when we had the honor of awarding this Public Service Award to its namesake, President Dave Frohnmayer, for his outstanding and most excellent public service to both our legal community, our university, and, without a doubt, the state of Oregon. Now, as many of you may also know, but I think it bears some retelling of what this award means. This award recognizes a graduate, a faculty member, or a friend of the law school whose public service, a lifetime commitment to public service, honors our school. The past recipients, including President Dave Frohnmayer, have been our Attorney General Hardy Myers, the Honorable Ted Goodwin, Mr. Lair Aschenbrenner, the late Honorable Clifford Freeman, and Justice Hans Lindy. Now, tonight, April 4th of 2008, we are privileged to include among those who have been honored our Chief Justice, Edwin Peterson, for his lifetime of public service. And it is, I must say, with a particular auspicious day to recognize Chief Justice Edwin Peterson. As many of you may also know, that today is, as April 4th, the day in which our nation is also honoring the 40th anniversary of the loss of a great leader with courage and passion for that which he believed, Dr. Martin Luther King. And as it was with Dr. Martin Luther King, it was all too familiar that it takes a great deal of struggle against the status quo to make those changes. Now, some time ago in the early 90s, Chief Justice Edwin Peterson exercised a great deal of courage when tackling the issue of diversity among our state bar and our legal community. And he didn't have to actually do that. A man of that stature and position, who had already achieved so much in life and was most certainly an outstanding leader in that legal community, did not have to tackle that struggle of diversity in Oregon, or for that matter, our legal profession. Now, as many of you may also know, that in the early 90s, he chaired the report that put to writing that very, very real issue of the need for diversity in our bar and our legal community, and the importance of access to justice because of that. Now, in the early 90s, as a student at the law school, Chief Justice Peterson, I got a copy of that report. And I remember very distinctly the impression that it had on me to know that someone like Chief Justice Edwin Peterson actually cared. And I thought, well, this might be a place I might actually stay. Now, Chief Justice Edwin Peterson, I was very grateful for you having taken that incredible step against a status quo. As an attorney of color, Chief Edwin Peterson, I remain grateful. And I would like you to know, Chief Justice Edwin Peterson, that as a judge of color, and I believe the first in Lane County, I remain grateful for your steps, the strides and the struggles that you took when you didn't have to. And it is for that I'm also equally honored to be the president of the of the Law School Alumni Association on this day when we have the opportunity to recognize your public service to our school, to our profession, and to this state. I'd like to ask our beloved Dean, Margie Paris, to please come up and begin the rest of the wonderful ceremony tonight. Dean Paris.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. On behalf of the faculty and the staff and the students and the administration of the U of O Law School, I bid all of you a great hello. This is one of the favorite evenings of the year for us in the law school, not only because we get to honor somebody such as Justice Peterson, whose life has embodied the best ideals of this profession that we love so much, but also because it's a chance for us to see some of you, whom we don't see all that frequently. So from all of us at the law school to all of you who are out in the practicing world, doing what you do, we bid you hello, and you have our deepest affection. It's my great honor tonight to give some thanks to people who worked very hard on this event. I'd like to thank the Frohnmayer Award Committee that has put this wonderful event together, and I will give you their names ever so briefly. Colin Andries, Eric Dolan, Ann Foster, Kurt Hansen, Allison Kruger, Greth Larson, Michael O'Connor, Adele Ridenour, and the Honorable David Schumann. So please give them a round of applause. It's my very great honor to introduce to you the chair of this evening's festivities and our MC, Michael R. O'Connor. Michael O'Connor is a 1997 graduate of the University of Oregon Law School. He is a distinguished owner in the law firm of Garvey Schubert Bear, which has had a growing table at this event for many years, and we're so delighted. I believe, Cynthia Frazier, you were the first chair of this event, lo, so many years ago. So we're delighted to see you in the center there. Michael has been an amazing contributor to the bar. Among the many things that he does, in terms of his work for volunteer organizations, besides this organization. He's been the president of the Oregon Club of Portland, as you know, a big booster club having to do with all things ducky. And he had the distinct honor this year of being named the Oregon Club of Portland's 2007 Duck of the Year, which I think is a unique and distinguished honor. Go, Michael. Which perhaps pales only in comparison with an award that he won last year, and that's from the Portland Business Journal. He was selected as one of Portland's 40 under 40. So, Michael, thank you very much for your efforts on behalf of this event. Please come up and lead us through the wonderful evening.
All right. Well, thank you, Dean Paris, for that very generous introduction. You know, the best part about winning Duck of the Year, actually, is that you get priority one parking at Autzen Stadium for a year. So I was pretty excited about that. Although one of my partners, Bob Weaver at the Garvey Schubert firm, said to me, you know, Michael, you may have peaked too early. I mean, what's left for you now? I don't know. But here I am, so maybe I haven't quite peaked yet. I do have one observation, though, as the MC tonight, and that is that the cocktail hour is decidedly more fun when you are not the MC. So thank you all for coming tonight. You know, it's a real honor for me to be here. And over the last few months, since we decided that the committee decided Justice Peterson would be getting this award, I've had the opportunity to speak with both him and his lovely wife on a number of occasions. Got to know them, I think, a little bit over the phone, and they are delightful people. And we could not be honoring a finer man tonight, and I'm honored to be here to help give you the award. Thank you. Now, I spoke with the Petersons about how they would like tonight to run, and they wanted it to be dignified, but they also wanted it to be somewhat lighthearted and fun. And Wayne Anala, who's one of the speakers tonight, I think will really cash in on that later. They are classmates from the class of 1957. So if anyone's going to run over time, it's going to be Wayne Anala. In the spirit of keeping tonight lighthearted, I'd also ask that you please laugh at my jokes. All right. Now, as you might imagine, this event does not just happen. There are a lot of people and organizations that help make this the law school's premier event in the city of Portland. First, I'd like to thank our wine sponsor. I'm sure you'd all like to thank our wine sponsor. It's Willamette Valley Vineyards, and as you may know, the founder, Jim Bernot. Yeah, give a round of applause. Free wine. The founder of Willamette Vineyards, Jim Bernot, was actually a student body president of the University of Oregon. So, and has been a lifelong avid duck, and we really appreciate his support. This might surprise you, but the Law School Alumni Association is not one of the wealthiest organizations in the United States, and so any help we can get is appreciated. So thank you, Willamette Valley Vineyards. Also, we'd like to thank the table sponsors. This could not happen without the support of many of Portland's top law firms and other distinguished individuals who have helped put this together. In no particular order, well, actually it's alphabetical, but Rich Alexander from the Stoll Reeves firm, Bullard Smith Jernstedt Wilson, Cosgrave Vergeer Kester, Duncarney Allen Higgins and Tung, Foster Pepper, my firm Garvey Schubert Bear, Tom Garrison from the class of 1957, Hiller Monfils Williams and the class of 1996, a spirited bunch, Kent and Johnson LLP, Schwabe Williamson and Wyatt, Tonkin Torp, Willamette University Law School, that was very gracious of them to join us tonight at this event, and the folks at Williams Kastner. Thank you all for purchasing tables and for helping us support this award. The Alumni Association would like to thank all of the people from the law school and the university who have come up, including Dean Paris, President Frohnmayer, a number of faculty and students. It's really a great thrill for us here in Portland to really feel reconnected to the university in Eugene, something we don't always have the opportunity to do. I was told when asked which dignitaries to introduce that there would be too many and half the room would stand up. So thank you, dignitaries, for coming. Having said that, I would like to acknowledge three people in the room who are former recipients of this award. Of course, President Dave Frohnmayer, Justice Hans Lindy, last year's recipient, and Attorney General Hardy Myers. This is my second year on the committee for this event, and three people that really need to be thanked that have not yet. They're the ones who figure out the napkins and the programs and make sure the mailing list is done, and it's a lot of work. If you've never done it before, you have no idea how much. But Rachel Johnson, Courtney Croak, and Matt Roberts, thank you very much for helping put this award together. In addition to some remarks from President Frohnmayer later in the evening, our honoree will be introduced by three speakers. Those are going to be Dwayne Bosworth from Davis Wright Tremaine, the Honorable Susan Graber, and Wayne Anala, who I've already mentioned and am afraid of. We're very fortunate to have these three people doing this tonight because they've all been part of Justice Peterson's life in very different ways, and I think when they talk, you're going to hear very different perspectives on the Chief Justice and his lifelong career in the law. And you know, when you think about it, Justice Peterson graduated in 1957 from the law school. A lot has changed in the profession in the last 51 years. When then advocate Ed Peterson started at Tooze, Kerr, Peterson, Marshall, and Schenker, although I doubt it had his name in it right away. You know, civil juries were commonplace. I did a little research today. Do you know in 2007, of the 22,680 civil cases that were terminated in Multnomah County, excluding FEDs, 90 cases went to a civil jury trial, which was up from 87 in 2006. The world has certainly changed, I think, in that sense, and our profession obviously needs to look at ways to preserve this art of trial work, but that's one thing that's changed. A 1957 law graduate probably expected to spend most of his life, if not all, and when I say his, in 1957 it was his life, in one firm. Look at today. Today, nearly half of all women law graduates at the University of Oregon are women. 1 in 5 is a person of color. What's that? Oh, an unintended joke. And probably my best one of the night. Thank you. Well, you know what I meant. Nearly half of all of today's graduates are women. And 1 in 5 are students of color. And people change firms as a matter of routine now. That did not happen 51 years ago. Another thing that's different is the way that lawyers market themselves. I doubt that the old Tooze firm in 1957 had a marketing department, but today, look at this. One only needs to look at the pages of the Portland Journal to learn that Schwabe, Williamson, and Wyatt are the legal advisors for the future of your business. Dunn Carney, where I started my practice, big enough to get the job done, small enough to keep it personal. We all know Boulevant means business, even though they didn't buy a table. And of course, my firm, Garvey, Schubert, Bear, and you, the power of partners. I don't know what that means. You know, I even have, my firm's marketing director is sitting at the Garvey, Schubert, Bear table tonight. Yes, Michaela, thank you. And I want you all to know that I've been assured extra consideration at comp time if I mention Garvey, Schubert, Bear as many times as Garvey, Schubert, Bear will fit into the conversation. All right, so the legal world has changed, and we have 3 people tonight to talk about their unique experiences with this fine man sitting in front of me. One spent years working with Justice Peterson to prevent racism. One sat with him on the Oregon Supreme Court, and another graduated with him from the University of Oregon in 1957. Now, a few things about the speakers coming up. They have been instructed to be short, funny, and touching in less than 5 minutes. Now, I don't have Oscar music. I don't have a cane. But if I need to get them off the stage, I may move closer to it, Wayne. And you know, they're all 3 lawyers, and we know how we all go on too long. So hopefully we'll get the trains running on time tonight. We're going to do 2 speakers now, and then we're going to break for our entree, and then the 3rd speaker, Wayne, will be up, followed by President Frohnmayer's remarks, and then, of course, some remarks from the Chief Justice. So my first introduction, our first speaker tonight, is Dwayne Bosworth. Dwayne Bosworth never worked at Garvey Schubert Bear. He is a 1982 graduate of the law school and was the editor-in-chief of the Oregon Law Review. He served on the law school's Board of Visitors, now known as the Dean's Advisory Council, for 6 years. Some of that time was with both Justice Peterson and Judge Susan Graber, who's here with us tonight as well. He was chair of the Board of Visitors from 1990 to 1992, when President Frohnmayer was the dean of the law school. Dwayne is a partner with the Davis Wright Tremaine firm here in Portland. In fact, he was supposed to be at his firm retreat in Phoenix tonight, but is here for his friend, Justice Peterson. Although I will tell you, if any of you have been to a firm retreat, it was not a huge sacrifice. He helped to found the. Sorry, ours are awful. I don't know. He helped to found the Understanding Racism Foundation with Justice Peterson 10 years ago, has been on its board all that time, and is a former chair of the foundation. He will speak largely, but briefly, he's assured me briefly, about that experience and about his friendship with Justice Peterson, excuse me. Dwayne Bosworth, thank you.
Thanks, Michael. I have been instructed to be brief, and I'm going to choose my words very carefully, not like the 1.5 business that we've gone through here, because Ed Peterson is a student of words, and he chooses his words very carefully. I remember an occasion when he was going to introduce me to a group, and he said that Dwayne Bosworth is a model speaker. I was briefly very flattered and surprised until he reminded the group that when you look in the dictionary under model, the first definition is a small replica of the real thing. And if it didn't happen exactly that way, you know that it could have, right? So we're good. There have been some extraordinary second careers in our history, and I was going to tell you about a few of them, but in the interest of time, let me point to Ed's second, third, fourth, and fifth careers, if you count law practice and teaching and mediation. Of course, his work on the court. I'm not here to talk about his exceptional tenure as Justice and Chief Justice or his practice or teaching careers. My story begins exactly 10 years ago last month, but I'm not going to go through it year by year, unlike some speakers we've had. When Ed Peterson launched in the Lane Powell law firm program that became known as Understanding Racism, Ed had, as Mustafa has said, chaired a task force on racial issues in the judicial system, and I always felt that that gave him some tremendous insights and eye-opening information. As Ed has said many times, everyone thought that there were problems, but absolutely no one thought that he or she was the source in any way of the problem. And what Ed also saw in that process was that overt racism, while of course intolerable, was far, far less of a problem than absolutely unintended, unrecognized, perhaps unbidden acts of racial discrimination. And by that I mean simply seeing and treating people with regard to less than the wholeness of their humanity because of race. And out of this experience, Ed developed the idea of a series of conversations that would bring to the fore for each participant our unknown, non-transparent, silent tapes that every one of us has in our brain on the subject of race. Ed's idea was pure genius. I don't know exactly where it came from. Like the classical Athena, it sprung fully formed from his head in a relative instant. And the form that he came up with some 10 plus years ago is the form that we continue to use today in every aspect, except for there is some new content along the way. You should know that Ed's idea is in fact the subject of a current doctoral dissertation. Like all ideas of genius, Ed's was simple but brilliant. The genius lies in just a couple of points. First, the program is the antithesis of diversity training. In other words, no one teaches the participants anything. two facilitators gently guide a conversation, and the content of the program is the participants' reaction to some materials that are carefully chosen, and their own self-examinations in conversations with 20 other people, that's the size of the group, their own reactions to those materials and their own examination of their own thoughts. The second point of genius was that the conversation is extended over 6 weeks, once a week for 90 minutes. And the result is a gestation, a time for people to reflect. And the results are very exceptional. I'll cut this quite short here, but responding, for example, to the statement, I'm committed to taking action to reduce racism in my workplace, for example. Several different scholarly surveys have shown that the strongly agree to that statement jumps from about 14% to well over 50% after taking this class. And 94% of all the participants answer yes to the question, do you feel that your participation in this program will improve the quality of your life? And you should know, and I think this will be surprising to you, that this program is headed toward the 5,000th participant in Oregon. And that is some kind of genius, really. What was the source of this inspiration? I think Gertrude Stein said, a mensch is a mensch is a mensch, and if she didn't say it like the other thing that Ed might not have said, that she should have. Whatever praise can be given for Ed's distinguished public life as a justice, his essential menschness lies in his second or third or fourth or fifth career in addressing race in our communities and in our daily lives. I'll just make one other point about working with Ed. What it's like to work with him. And I have to comment here. He makes everybody look terrific. You know those Fred Astaire movies where Fred picks up a mop or a broom and he starts dancing? And you're watching it, and pretty soon you start thinking to yourself, man, that broom is pretty good. and that is exactly what it is always like working with Ed Peterson. Will Rogers once said that it's great to be great, but it's greater to be human. And I think that he had Edwin J. Peterson and his efforts concerning race in mind. Ed may well have been deserving of the Dave Frohnmayer Award for all of his accomplishments as a distinguished jurist. But on this 40th anniversary, as Mustafa said, of the death of Martin Luther King, it's his inspiration, his unflagging energy with regard to race in this country that make him a hero to me, and that surely qualify as public service which brings honor to the University of Oregon Law School. And I forgot my glass, but I would say here that I raise my glass to Edwin J. Peterson and honor him tonight as a good friend and a hero. Thank you.
Our next speaker is the Honorable Susan Graber. Despite having never worked at Garvey Schubert Bear, the Honorable Susan Graber was appointed to the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit in 1998 by President William Jefferson Clinton. Previously, she sat on the Oregon Court of Appeals from 1988 to 1990, and the Oregon Supreme Court from 1990 to 1998, where she served with Justice Peterson. Judge Graber practiced law from 1972 to 1988, most recently as a partner in the Portland office of Stoll Reeves, where she specialized in employment law and other civil litigation. Judge Graber received her BA Phi Beta Kappa from Wellesley College in 1969 and her JD from Yale Law School in 1972. In 2000, Judge Graber chaired the American Bar Association's Committee on Appellate Practice. She was named Oregon's 1998 Legal Citizen of the Year. Very impressive. And in 2001, she received Yale's Tercentenary, did I say that right? Good. For Country Award in Oregon. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Susan Graber.
I brought props, so I needed some help getting up here. I am absolutely delighted to be here tonight to speak on behalf of the recipient of the 2008 Frohnmayer Public Service Award, retired Chief Justice Edwin J. Peterson. And it's particularly delightful for me to see so many old friends, some of whom I haven't seen in a while, and former colleagues. I saw Justice Fadley here and others with whom I've worked, and it's a delight to see you all. Now for the props. Prop number 1. A boggle game. Okay, for those of you who can't see it, I don't want to hide my face, but I'm sure Ed Peterson will recognize this boggle game. This very set resides in my office, and it has accompanied me from job to job for a long time. I'm not going to say quite how many years, but Justice Peterson and I used to play boggle during our lunch hours when we were serving together on the Oregon Supreme Court in the 90s, and we must have played hundreds of times. I didn't count. But I promise I'm not here to challenge him to a word duel tonight, but this is a very useful item because it also comes with a timer, and since I've been told to be brief, I'll set the hourglass, and as the sand runs out, I will describe for you the kind of public servant I came to know during our years on the court. Ed Peterson was the kind of public servant who worked hard and who motivated his colleagues. He established the annual retreat, which I assure you sounds like more fun than the annual retreat of that law firm. This was a 2-day period away from the pressures of the office during which the members of the Supreme Court could talk frankly and brainstorm ideas. An example that comes to mind is that we came up with a revised oral argument calendar that we felt better managed the time of the lawyers as well as the time of the judges themselves. Ed improved our opinions with incisive comments and editorial suggestions. In drafting his own cases, he kept an open mind and remained receptive to the insights of others. He encouraged us to reach consensus whenever possible. We had spirited dissents, but plurality opinions, no, and nastiness, never. And a lot of that was Ed Peterson's doing. Ed Peterson was the kind of public servant who cared about the less glamorous side of being Chief Justice, judicial administration, and about the conservation of public resources. He oversaw the administrative consolidation of the circuit and district courts. He led the effort to promulgate the state's first set of uniform trial court rules, instituted guidelines to effect the timely disposition of litigation, and guided the court system into the computer age. He always kept a keen eye on efficiency as well as on the delivery of high-quality services to the people of Oregon. Putting his waist-cutting money where his mouth was, he and I also shared a judicial assistant for a time. Ed Peterson was the kind of public servant who led by moral example. As Dwayne has detailed for you, Ed established, this even came before the project that he was discussing. He established a task force to examine racial and ethnic bias in the state's judicial system and tried to find ways to implement its recommendations. Again, not because he had to, but because he knew it was the right thing to do. Similarly, he has championed the rights of women to equal status in the legal system. For example, he ensured that the Oregon Judicial Conference educated its members on issues concerning domestic violence. Closer to home for me, he was totally supportive when I took the Oregon Supreme Court's very first maternity leave. And again, making these issues personal to himself, he hired female and African American and gay law clerks, and he has taught and mentored and advised and helped dozens of law students of diverse backgrounds. He may be best known for his push to achieve higher levels of professionalism among all lawyers, bringing together civil plaintiffs and civil defendants lawyers, prosecutors, and criminal defense bar to strive for civility, cost containment, and appropriate, sometimes alternative methods of dispute resolution. Ed Peterson was the kind of public servant who always kept his sense of humor at the ready, which brings me to my second and final prop. And I'm sure Ed and Anna will both remember this. A number of years ago, right around July 4th, Ed and Anna set off on a little canoe trip with my husband, Bill, and me, and our then young daughter, Rachel. Ed and Anna asked us to wait in an eddy while we raced ahead to prepare a surprise, the 4 Ps, we were told. In a few minutes, we paddled around a bend in the river to discover this lovely floating toy. Now, the 4 Ps, at the time we were told, stood for patriotic, plastic, pink pig. But this evening, the 4 Ps stand for Peterson's perfect public service persona.
Short, funny, and touching. Less than 5 minutes. Perfect. They're going to be serving our dinners now. We're going to take about a half-hour break, and we'll come back with Wayne Anala.
Well, when I was given this opportunity to speak, the first reaction I had was, why me? And my biggest concern tonight is that when I sit down, that'll be a uniform reaction on your part. I could start out with a little bit of name dropping. Of course, I'm going to tell you in a minute about our class, because this is the University of Oregon's event, and we did graduate from that university. But I was going to, just before I led into that, I was thinking about, I suppose I could try and be more of a basker in the reflection of Ed's career, lifetime career. I could bask in that, and there was a little of that going on. But I could tell you that I've gone down the Deschutes with Ed, and he's always been the leader on any number of raft trips, and our families have been to Cultus Lake and spent a week there together, and drop a few more events like that. Since he retired, I used to drop his name a lot. It has no commercial value anymore. And when he retired at a rather young age, it was a big disappointment to me. But I'm going to get myself out of the middle of this event by telling you what I really intended to tell you. We all graduated, and I say we all, there are 7 of us here tonight, which is not too bad considering our... Well, it's not bad considering our age, you know. We all met 54 years ago at the University of Oregon Law School. There was a little difference for you, some of you young'uns who aren't in their mid-70s on into your 80s. The difference, I think, in our class and why we have the camaraderie that we do have is that almost the entire class of 57, we entered in 54, of course, were veterans. Almost every one of them was married, and many of us had children. So we were older, and I like to think maybe somewhat more mature. Most of the class, not including me, had just come off of service in the Korean conflict. We had, and Ed was one of those. Ed was an Air Force officer. I've often thought, off and on over the years, that Ed's Air Force career, there must have been some mix-up in his pay grade and the authority that he apparently was given in the Air Force, because when he got out, he never hesitated a moment to be a leader. In fact, he never hesitated a moment to tell any of us what we should do. And he has therefore been the leader of our class of 57 with Don Wilson. They were really co-leaders, because Don and Ed were on the Board of Bar Governors at the same time, and that was back in the days when you could actually touch the hem of some robe of a member of the Board of Bar Governors. You actually knew them. That doesn't seem to be quite as prevalent now. But anyway, we have another member of our of our class of 57, and that's Tom Garrison over here, who has come up with the table. And he's not the class leader, he's the patriarch of the class. Because I just told you that most of our class had come, were veterans of the Korean conflict, and Tom had actually saw combat during World War II in the Pacific. So he was a bit older and therefore qualified to be the patriarch of our class. He has, and this is not about Tom, I know, but I'll just tell you, I want to give his book a plug. He's just finished a book. He's just finished a book on Lincoln, and he knows whereof he writes because he also served under Grant in the Civil War. But in any event, I'm glad that you chose my good friend Ed, and I could say, in the name-dropping field, I could tell you that Ed is my best friend in the law business, but that's also true of the rest of the class. And you'll say, well, yeah, sure, he'd get up and say that they've got all this great camaraderie in that class, but it's probably an exaggeration. It just isn't an exaggeration. Our particular class only had 20, was it 20 or 21, Ed? There was always a question. 21, because we picked up one straggler along the way, and he joined us. We had no ladies graduate with us, no women either, and we had one lady started with us, but one of our class members married her, and they went off and had a short honeymoon in Europe, and that was the end of her legal career. So when I talk about the band of brothers that we have, well, I'm sorry that I have to tell you ladies that in those days, it was, as you know, it was a rarity to have a lady in the law school. There may have been a maximum of 2 or 3 in the entire law school at that time. And I thought I would just pick one subject. You see, I was told I could only had 30 minutes to talk to you people. 5. All right. I thought I ought to tell you something about the law and Ed. And so the only thing I could think of that has not been commented upon, and with good reason, is his single-handed implementation of the Uniform Trial Court rules. And to you non-lawyers here, that's really going to be dry. To you lawyers, it's pretty dry. But Ed, as you may know, if you read the biography on the little invitation, Ed was voted Chief Justice in 1983. And it was hard to believe, but by 1985, Oregon had printed and enforced the Uniform Trial Court rules. And they were authored, and the chief, I don't know about the authoring of it, but the chief implementation of that was Ed Peterson, Chief Justice. He made a swing around the state and said to all of us that would listen to him that he thought the time, he said the time has come and the time is right for a uniform trial court rules for all 36 counties. And his unanimous response from all of us at that time was really, in modern lingo, would be that in the area of Cialis, the time had not arrived. The moment would never arrive. We didn't need the Uniform Trial Court rules. We wouldn't need them in 36 hours or 36 years. Now, if I can bore you, those non-lawyers who don't have to put up with the Uniform Trial Court rules, which we have since '85, I told him, and others told him as well, that we had gotten along in the Oregon State Bar for 120 years that we could think of without printed uniform trial court rules that would, and the phrase leveling the playing field was what he was up to, and that phrase had not been invented either. But his objection seemed to be that he wanted to dissolve the most sport we could have in trying cases in Oregon, and that was known as hometowning. The circuit court rules were not printed; they were part of the common law, and you picked them up by osmosis. And it was best if you lived within about 5 miles of that particular courthouse where the case was being tried. And if somebody from downtown Portland, whom we used to call, and still do, by the way, the silk stocking lawyers from the big firms in downtown, when they came out to the outlying counties, why, we didn't ask for any particular favoritism, but the local lawyers, all we asked for was a fair advantage. Well, Ed apparently, because he did try cases for about 22 years here in downtown Portland, and he apparently was a victim of that a time or two. So he had all of the drive and all of the zeal, the missionary zeal, if you will, of Robert Preston in The Music Man when he was out trying to sell the rest of us on a uniform trial court rule so all 36 counties would have the same rules, they'd be printed, and every lawyer would know what those rules were. We didn't realize at that time that the Chief Justice, now he was Chief Justice, and in his first 2 years he accomplished this, and we didn't realize that the Chief Justice had the power to enact these rules single-handed. He didn't even have to consult with the rest of the court, and we don't know where that power came from, but it still exists today. I looked this morning just to make sure. This morning I checked that all amendments to the Uniform Trial Court rules, if they are approved by the Chief Justice, that's it. He doesn't even ask the rest of the court what they think of it. So our reaction at that time, when I say our reaction, I'm talking about all of us in the bar, and there were only, at that time, there may have been 5,000 of us. By the way, when we graduated in 1957, Ed and the rest of our class, there were about 2,000 lawyers, active lawyers in the state. Probably by 85 it had grown to 5,000. Now it's, 12 or 13,000, or pressing 13,000 as I understand it. But in any event, we didn't realize that Ed had the authority, even though all of us discouraged him immensely from pursuing this, to go ahead and do it single-handedly, and he didn't really stress that. So we had, I don't know quite how to put this, but I'll tell you this. In 1985, in the first 2 years, he'd done it. And you probably know that the court elects the Chief Justice for 4 years. And what his hurry was to get this job done in the first 2 years, I really didn't understand at that time because he did it so surreptitiously. But I think now, thinking back, I'll bet he was worried about the rest of the court having realized what it was. And he was afraid of a midterm election. So the way the Uniform Trial Court rules in 1985, we got the whole job done from asking everybody what they thought about it to finding out that nobody thought it was a good idea to doing it. And he did have a committee. He kind of dressed up the situation with a alleged committee, and he shanghaied a few lawyers who had petitions for review pending, and a few others who were awaiting an opinion. And this was his committee for the Uniform Trial Court rules. And of course, they rubber-stamped his language. His bandwagon was about the size of a rickshaw. But it was done. And we're still enjoying the uniform trial court rules. Now I'll be quick about it because I know my time's running out. I just need to enlighten you with just a couple of more comments on the rules. Right in the preamble of the UTCR, Uniform Trial Court Rules, you will find references to the LSR. And one reads and says, well, what might the LSR be? Because the UTCR you will abide by except unless there's some difference provided in the LSR. Well, the LSR is the local supplemental rules, and these rules are not supplemental at all, they are different. So you see our circuit judges didn't lay down the job entirely. So now, I didn't tell you that today the UTCRs consist of 85 pages, and the local supplementary rules, which I checked this morning, consist of 518 pages. And these are, in each case, these are put out by West Publishing Company in the tiniest print you've ever seen. If the font was any smaller, you could put them on the head of a pin. Well, anyway, the local supplemental rules should be called the local aberrations, or the local printed aberrations, maybe, because, wait, there's more. Each one of the counties can have, and usually, I'm just about through. I told him he could do this. Each one of the counties has oral aberrations to the printed aberrations. So I suppose that we should say that the circuit judges have done their best to fend off this wonderful job done by our good friend Ed, and he is the father of the UTCR. That's never been mentioned, or no, he's never been blamed for it previously publicly. So you ought to, this is his chance, this is my chance to compliment him on being the father of the UTCR, and as with the kids, with most fathers with kids, why there's always a problem of rebelliousness that's on the part of the circuit judges. And I suppose that what we ought to end this thing up with, so he's going to push me off the stage if I don't, that we should say to Ed with a firm hand and a clear eye, a job well done, and I think that would be overstating it just a bit. And I will say, Ed, I guess you were right, because we've...
Well, having started practice in 1997, I had no idea that there was a life before the UTCRs. But actually, I want to thank you now, because when I was a new associate at the Dunn Carney firm, I remember getting sent to Benton County because they knew I was going to get home teamed and no one else wanted to do it. So thank you for those, Ed, and thank you, Wayne. That was great. It is now my pleasure to introduce the president of the University of Oregon, a man who, in my opinion, has done more to protect public higher education in this state than anyone over the last 2 decades. President Frohnmayer.
Michael, thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for your support of public higher education, and more particularly public legal education in the state of Oregon, through your long devotion to the University of Oregon School of Law, and particularly to the award ceremony this night. I must say, to correct at least something that came to the ether a little bit earlier in the evening, I share the surname of the award, but it is not my namesake. As Judge Levy pointed out to this group a couple of years ago, my father, Otto Frohnmayer, was a public service-oriented lawyer. His only elective office was the local school board, but he devoted countless hours to the Board of Bar Governors, to the growth of the legal profession, to the reform of law. He, as well as my brother John, are graduates of the University of Oregon School of Law. And as Judge Levy pointed out, my wife Lynn is a long-suffering spouse of a former professor and former dean of the School of Law, but beyond that, was engaged in massive law reform herself and testified very frequently, not only before legislative bodies about the reform of our foster care, child abuse, and adoption statutes, but also engaged in countless efforts to reform the laws of nearly half the states in the Union. So there are at least 4 of us who are grateful that the award is a family namesake. None of us, Michael, worked for Garvey Schubert. At least we have not yet. But I must say that the accumulation of increasingly numerous mentions of the firm has, of course, a philanthropic price tag attached to it, and Dean Paris and I intend to pay you a visit in the near future to settle on the precise amount. And congratulations for your public service in that regard as well. Chief, and I mean that in every respect, it's an honor to salute you. Ed Peterson, known for his courtesy, his humility, his intelligence, humor, and his leadership, among many, many other things. It took a recent presidential candidate's crisis, if you will, one I believe not only successfully, but maybe even triumphantly overcome, at least in the short run, to reinitiate discussions of race and ethnicity and how we discuss them, if indeed we ever really do. So to salute someone who began those discussions unafraid now many years ago is, I think, a true tribute to someone who did the right thing. And I'm quite confident that that's why Ed Peterson did it. Not because someone forced him to do it, not because he was the chief, although he was, because it was the right thing to do. Some years ago now, but I remember this moment very clearly. I was teaching a course in legal issues to a group of higher education administrators in the state of California. And I've been doing this every year with my family for a very long period of time. And this one year, right after the first lecture, a student came up to me. He was not a law student. He was a citizen, an educator, and smart guy. I remember what he said to me. He said, "Professor Frohnmayer, tell me, does law have anything to do with justice?" And I must say that although I think most of you know that I'm seldom at a loss completely for words, I was for a moment. Because that connection to me is so innate to devotion to the practice of law, to the practice of judging, that I couldn't imagine someone who really believed that the two might be 2 totally separate terms, 2 totally separate callings. But in the case of our honoree tonight, there is a unity. We call him Justice Peterson for a reason. So it is my great pride, and with the help of Judge Mustafa, who will now join me on the program, to present this year's Frohnmayer Award to our great friend, a person who is the subject of our enormous admiration, our great and good friend, Ed Peterson. Justice. And there is a bouquet being delivered to Anna Peterson at this very moment. It does take 2, and you've done it so well, Anna. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
You know, it's interesting. Oh, I've got my remarks all written because when I ad lib, I tend to get into trouble. So let me back up.
Never bothered me, Ed.
President Frohnmayer and Dean Paris and friends, Dave's reference to the philanthropic price tag brought something to mind. I first met Dave Frohnmayer when he was a professor at the law school and a Lane County legislator, possibly the last Republican legislator elected in Lane County. And then he was a superb attorney general, and it was my pleasure to work with him when he was attorney general. But he's developed an entirely new skill as the president of the University of Oregon. And that skill is this. When he approaches a University of Oregon alum, the Oregon alum has an irresistible impulse to empty his or her pockets. Mustafa, I was really touched by your opening remarks. I can't tell you how much I was touched by them, and I thank you for them. And the thing that particularly hit home with me is if what we did with that task force report in any way led to your staying in Oregon, it was a wonderful accomplishment for us. Now, there's one person that who I'd like to recognize tonight. I don't know where she's sitting. Rachel Johnson, where are you? Would you stand up, please? Now, Rachel is the unsung hero for this event tonight. She's the one who has worked tirelessly to make it a success, and I personally thank you, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of everybody, Rachel. When Michael O'Connor called to discuss the program this evening, he said, "By the way, keep it light and keep it short. I've heard you before, and if you talk too long, we may both be in trouble." He gave me 8 minutes, and I've written out my remarks, and I think I'll meet the deadline. Wayne. As was mentioned, I graduated from the University of Oregon School of Law in 1957. There were 21 men in our graduating class, and as Wayne said, there were no women. Though our professors were small in number, there were 4 of them: Orlando John Hollis, Charlie Howard, K.J. O'Connell, and Frank Lacey, known as Bob Lacey to many of you. They were titans to me, every one of them. We received a good legal education at the University of Oregon School of Law, and I'm eternally grateful for that. In law school, you tend to take your classmates for granted. But as the years went by, members of our class came closer together. All of them became members of the Oregon State Bar. Every one of the 21 has been a success in his professional life and in his life. Most of them practiced in Oregon. They have made significant contributions to the bar and to their communities. They have been good to me. I have learned a lot from them. And as Wayne mentioned, there is a magic in our small group that I have experienced nowhere else in my life. It's hard to describe, but it's a wonderful feeling. 2 years ago, we gathered in this very room to honor another member of the class of 57, Larry Aschenbrenner. Here tonight from the class of 57 are Fred Granada, Wayne Anala, Don Williams, Jim Cox, Tom Garrison, Ed Fadley, and Lloyd Weisensee. Would the class of 57 please stand? didn't I said, Lloyd?
I said 7. There's 8. Isn't there 5 over there?
Well, Wayne, you've already demonstrated my poor judgment, and now you've shown I can't count. The faculty and the graduates of the University of Oregon School of Law have contributed significantly to the people of the state of Oregon. There is an expectation that Oregon Law School graduates will contribute to society, and they do. On another but related note, my current activities include teaching at Willamette University College of Law. Willamette, too, has been generous. I have learned a lot from the faculty and students at Willamette. I'm indebted to the school for its many kindnesses to me in the last 14 years. The Willamette contingent sitting over here tonight includes Associate Dean Peter Letso and his spouse Felicity, Director of Career Services Phyllis and Kevin Miles, Professor David Friedman, and Professor Dean Richardson. Would the Willamette contingent please stand up? In doing so, we honor an individual. But more significantly, we honor the institution that spawned us. We honor the graduates and faculty of the University of Oregon School of Law. And we honor the profession we love. Were you to come to our home, you'd walk down a hall past our office. We call it our office because Anna and I do a lot of work there. Looking in, you would see photographs of some of my former partners. Large portraits of Lamar Tooze Sr., Robert M. Kerr, and Lamar Tooze Jr. look down upon us as we work. I learned the skills of a trial lawyer at the elbow of Lamar Tooze Jr. There are also 2 former partners of mine here tonight, Skip Frank and Paul Duden. I loved and respected my partners, and I miss them. There is no photograph of the Tooze firm receptionist on our wall. But she became a large part of my life. She is my wife of 37 years, Anna Peterson. As many of you know, Anna is a tireless worker in many causes. A first citizen of Salem, she is better known in Salem than I am, and is well recognized for her volunteer work in economic development, art, music, historic theater restoration, and these last 5 years, a tireless fighter against methamphetamine, forming a local task force that became the model for the governor's meth task force, which she chairs. And perhaps most importantly, Anna, too, is a duck. A graduate of the University of Oregon School of Journalism, and she worked as the first development director at the University of Oregon School of Law in 1984 to 1987. Now, I'd like to also introduce my daughter, Sherry Peralt, and her partner, Michael Harding. My passion in the last 20 years has been promoting equal opportunity for persons of color. Why did a white man raised in a small, all-white town in Wisconsin, who was privileged to attend the practically all-white University of Oregon, who became a partner in an all-white Portland law firm and served on an all-white Oregon Supreme Court, do that? because it needed doing. It continues to need doing, and I intend to keep doing it. So once again, tonight we honor public service. Lawyers are the spirited leaders of nonprofit boards for children, the arts, education, the environment, and land use. In every Boy Scout paper drive, you'll find a lawyer driving the truck or handling the papers. As we help craft public policy, we may not agree, but our discussions give rise to sound decisions that serve the public good. That is our goal, to create certainty and order around us and to leave behind us a better place than we found. I thank this law school for what it has given me. I thank this law school for what it's given my classmates, and me, I should have said. I look forward to continued opportunities to return to the law school what it has done for me. And I particularly would like to thank as well the Law School Alumni Association for this program this evening, Michael O'Connor, and particular thanks to Dwayne Bosworth and Susan Graber for their remarks. And to you, Wayne, as well. I love Wayne as I love all of my classmates. And finally, I thank each of you for coming tonight. Thank you.